Ooh, I'm liking that clap. It makes it sound very official. Here we are, man. Welcome back to the Barcode Collective podcast. I'm here with Ayesha Sehra.
Yeah.
Said that right?
Shit? Yeah, you did.
Fucking over-delivered on the Sehra. So, joining me today in Pasadena at Spacebar Wellness in our dope-ass little studio.
So cool.
If you're not watching and you're listening, I suggest you go to barcodecollective.com and check out this episode because we got some vibey pink lights that I picked up on Instagram.
They're so nice.
That targeted marketing got me. They just hit me. So yeah, stoked on the studio as always. Got Nuncio in the corner. Eventually I'm going to get him on a mic, but he's over there manning the show. Operations podcast in the building. Appreciate all that they do for us. But on this episode, we're here to hear your story. We're going to take some of the spotlight off of me right now, and we're going to shine it on you.
I have a podcast too, so I'm used to asking all the questions.
So first,
we're switching it.
Well, let's start there. What's the name of the podcast?
My podcast is called Coffee and a Good Vibe.
Okay.
I love coffee. Speaking of which, you made me the best coffee ever.
And now I just got to deliver on the good vibe.
Yeah, exactly. I'm always about positive energy.
Okay.
Only positive energy. So natural.
Let's talk about that real quick. Because I'm going to be honest with you. When I see a good vibes neon or good vibes only neon, pisses me off because shit is rough sometimes. I'm sitting in some bad vibes sometimes.
Yeah, but I think it's obviously life happens, things in life happen, but I think it's your attitude that you approach to the circumstances that make all the difference. So it's like if you're riding a wave, you can be really negative about it, or you can honor it and make the most of it and not be as miserable in that process of going through it.
Yeah. Did you guys hear how she said process? She's a Canadian, if you didn't know.
It's going to come out when I say about and stuff like that.
I thought that was more of like a West Coast Canada thing. That's just a Canada thing?
Yep.
Okay.
And Americans point it out so much. I get that all the time.
We got to get, like I told you, you're like, you were asking about like what to expect here. And I said, I'm going to light a fire on your ass. I'm going to make you uncomfortable for 60 minutes.
Shit.
So here we go.
I'm going to ask questions back.
Please do. I mean, I think that as we were talking about before we actually started recording, I was doing all the damn talking and I find myself doing that because when a question's posed, I just want to run with it. And then I might start crying on your shoulder. I might not. We might have some breakthroughs.
It's good. People want to hear it.
Okay. Well, let's give it to them. First off, let's start with your story a little bit. Tell everyone, where you're coming from. We got Canada, but where specifically? How'd you make your way to LA? What are you working on? And let's go from there.
Awesome. Well, okay, so I'll do the highlight reel story.
Let's hit it.
But I moved from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. So anyone, Toronto, Drake, that's where I'm from. A lot of people know Toronto from Drake. So, but moved out to LA. Well, first I started traveling to LA around 22 years old. And basically I was here on and off. In Canada, I did a lot of stuff on the influencer side. So I did influencer marketing and brand strategy and brand consulting with different brands like Bumble and Movement Watches and Netflix and different brands like that in Toronto. But then over time, just traveling to LA in my early 20s, this place was home to me. And I'm an Aries, I'm really stubborn. And when I set a goal or a vision or I make a decision, I'll do anything it takes to make that vision a reality. Yeah. And that journey in itself of moving out here, making the decision was one thing, but man, the whole journey of going to get a visa and learning all about the different visas and having to do, so I have an E2 visa, which is when you have your own business and you invest in your business. But that visa took about 2 years to bring into reality and actually get that visa approved. So it was a long journey that I'll spare you that story because that's a whole hour of how to get a visa. And at my age too, the visa that I did, a lot of people who are a lot older and a lot of people do that visa when they're in their 50s and they want to bring their family in. So basically, long story short, that was the only visa I could have to run my own business, which
Gotcha.
I run a branding and PR agency. So I specifically work with influencers and personal brands and manage influencers, help them scale up their businesses. I work with a lot of health and wellness coaches in LA, helping them scale up their business models. And then through that, just naturally, I started doing influencer marketing campaigns for consumer-facing brands.
Okay.
So really heavily in the influencer space. And I honestly feel my age was a secret weapon in that because attaining clients and just really understanding that industry, being on the other side in Toronto, and then getting to now manage and oversee and like create an influencer campaign, I felt like that value add of being on the other side really served as such a catalyst to know what would convert from an influencer standpoint. And we were talking about this out there before, but there's so much that goes into a successful converting influencer campaign. But a lot of people are kind of like, I don't want to touch influencers because they're overpriced and they don't convert. But that's true. Yes. If you don't do your research on like the brand, the niche of the influencer, and like the way that message, I think content is so powerful, and social media, content creation, online marketing, it's like such a powerful tool to reach people, but it's only if that marketing messaging and that story is emotional and can connect people deeper. Like, you know, man, I'm going on a rag,
Let's
totally
go.
removed out of the story, but I get so passionate about like the work that I do and about like online marketing. And
well,
just,
I think it's
like,
super important to share. So, I mean, let's spend majority of the time on that because, you know, to give us a timestamp where we are in life is like we're starting to open up post-COVID. So many different industries have completely been shifted. And, you know, there's businesses out there, brick and mortar businesses that have been hammered that are trying to figure out how to get momentum, how to play the long game, but with some short ass results because we're racing the clock, you know, against the clock right now. So let's spend some time on that.
And it's totally unfair because like you had no choice, but overnight, like you lost your way that you were getting your majority of your business. Cause then all of a sudden now these companies had to scale online or even like build an online presence or think about like, okay, maybe we need a Shopify store to sell our stuff because no one's going to come in the door. So I totally hear on that side, like through when COVID hit, like the demand and just the conversations I was having with so many different creators, even like health and wellness coaches and influencers. I work with a lot of that type of clientele. And even then, like a lot of my really great clients, they were doing so much live events and retreats, especially in LA. I feel like there's such a market for it because it's beautiful here and everyone loves the vibes, like the good vibes. And we like it so much more than just online that they were thriving doing retreats, but then that stopped. So it's like when retreats are the majority of your income and maybe you had like online coaching on the side or like you didn't really want to do it, you were making enough with the retreats because the demand here is so large versus like where I'm from in Canada, like it's cold, like it's not a hub for retreats. It's not that kind of market.
Yeah, I will tell you though, the one solo trip that I did, as it wasn't really a retreat, it was more of a like small convention that I went to, was in Toronto. It was a Stoicon. It was a Stoicism convention.
What?
So yeah, I hit up Toronto.
When was this? What year?
2016 maybe.
Wow.
Yeah. So for all you late to the Stoicism game, bruh, been on that shit for a minute.
This guy's woke.
Bruh. So Toronto's a dope city, but you're right about that and the whole event thing and getting shut down. So I think the lesson out of this is like moving forward with a business that is well-rounded and is built for something like this. Cause like we've been talking about how to have like a little bit of an online presence or, you know, e-commerce leg of these brick and mortar businesses for a long time, but it was never out of straight up necessity that we had to do that.
Yeah.
Kicking ourselves
like,
hard
overnight.
for sure for not doing it. But, you know, we put these little things in place a couple of years ago, you know, one with like having a coaching app that we can onboard people into. And like, we just never gave it the time. And I don't know if we were talking about while we're recording or not, but it's like, these are some things that I get super excited about as like being all right, like this bulletproof business, if I can focus on it and then ultimately have the rest of the squad run with it. But it's been like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. We're all doing too much. So although we have this idea kind of brewing in the background, we haven't all been on the same page to launch it. So now here we are, you know, 2 years later, invested in this coaching app and paying monthly for it, you know, for like the, you know, maintenance of it and the data and like managing of the people that are in it. But we're not in a place where we can drive revenue from it or really even, you know, the touch points that we really need to. So now you have to, and we have to develop that. So what have some of like first let's highlight Because I think influencers, that word rubs a lot of people the wrong way.
Yeah.
What's your relationship with that word? How do you frame it to other businesses or people that might be held up on it?
Yeah, so I love that. I think everyone is an influencer in their own way. Like, it's anyone who has influence, and we all have influence over someone. And even when I go into it and I do a lot of meetings with different founders of companies, and I always say there's so much value. The riches are in the niches. So it's so much about like choosing those thought leaders in the space, those influential brands that have your demographic. Like you mentioned it before, like even with influencers, like it's so important that if you did a partnership with an influencer, it has to be an influencer that has majority of the demographic, the following in near Pasadena, like in LA, so they can come here. So it's so much more about like for a brand perspective, like the type of the niche and the demographic that they hold. But I think that everyone has influence. It just depends on like how they market themselves online and how their brand strategy and positioning is to then determine if they're actually going to be a value add for your brand or not. Like I had a client who we did a partnership with a brand. She has like a average following, like 70,000 followers. And she ended up converting like 3-4 times the spend that they spent on her, which is really successful versus like if they went with someone with 600K, doesn't just matter about the followers. Like followers do not equate to influence, but I will say like an influencer is anyone who truly has influence. And I think the more, just for someone listening, like the more intentional you see someone about their brand and the more like on brand they are to like their values. Like for example, like with your brand, you're very intentional about like what you stand for, the type of people you're around, like you can get that energy. And like there's some influencers who are more vanilla, like where they're just like, I'm a fashion blogger and like they don't really have a specific edge in fashion. It's just a fashion blogger. I would say like that is more, you're risking more of your money for your brand if it's a fashion brand that wants to partner. Like being really niched with any influencer you would consider a partnership with.
Gotcha. So I just kind of stay on that leg right there. It was just like, I feel like there might be an opportunity. I don't know where the money's at in it, but say, like in my case, like when I was telling you, like people of influence that I kind of want to work with are, people that might have only, again, not fixating on the followers per se, but just like a business owner that's local that I know owns and operates a gym that has 200 to 300 members. Yeah. That's the people that I ultimately want them to have influence over, and nothing necessarily on Instagram. So as far as like, say, when you're finding clients or you have influencers reaching out to you for help, that's we're playing the game of influence on social media, but how do we get in touch with influencers on a local levels as business owners? Do you think that's more of like the old, like just straight up networking groups type of shit that because I've never been a part of those. Like I hate that shit.
I hate that mindset around it too, like networking.
But I feel like if we could find somebody to rally local leaders,
you just gotta know the demo. I feel like that's why like I've really niched my agency into the influencer side, because when I moved here and I was creating the LLC, but also I had to like scale out clients, because to get the visa you had to prove yourself, and I had to have a number of contracts signed to guarantee certain revenues for the business for the 5 years I have the visa. It's like, yeah, you have to definitely like know that market. So I would say like, number one too, a side note is like, I like to also assess like the influencer based off of their business and their conversion. So if I like work with a client or an influencer reaches out and I get this, when I moved here, I got this a lot at Gold's Gym. I mean, so many influencers who had like a lot of following.
The Mecca in Venice?
Yeah, the Mecca. I would meet so many people, and then they would find out what I do and they'd be like, I need that. I need someone to manage my brand. I would say no to majority of these influencers who are, I'm not saying like all of them were like this, but a lot of them, they just posted like revealing photos on their Instagram, and they had a lot of comments and likes, but it wasn't quality. It was just like emojis from guys following them for other reasons. And I would say like a rule of thumb, like another thing that you could just do from the outside looking in is like look at their business offerings. And I always find like those influential brands are always the ones who have like a thriving business or a gym or a coaching program where they have a mastermind. They have different levels of offerings, because if someone has like different business offerings, you know they're converting versus like someone who straight up just like post pictures and like you could kind of tell what they're messaging. And I think I can dissect brands really quickly because I look at so many different things in their marketing and their copywriting and their funnels. I can like dissect a brand really quickly. But I would say like their business definitely does showcase that as well. And then you said something else about the how to go about reaching out. I think relationship building is key. I don't like networking, but I do think like when you meet one person, I think like attracts like when you meet like Chase, right? Through Chase tuning, all of us know Chase. We've all met each other. And when you hang around good people too, you naturally get connected. So I think that's a nicer way to approach it. And I do think like when you're a good person and you're doing something really dope and really cool, if you wanted to get after like health and wellness coaches in this space, they probably know 3 other really dope health and wellness coaches that could be a fit. So sometimes it's not about like the scale, but strategic like networking. I hate that word, but like connection building. Yeah. And like just being a super genuine human, I think will pierce through anything.
Yeah, for sure. And like anybody that I want around or like helping us promote, like I ultimately want to be able to feel like I'm providing value for them outside of just like monetary value, you know, like I don't want a transactional relationship more as like I pay you for that, you know. And again, there's a lot tied up into that where, you know, relationships with money or, you know, my self-worth type of shit. Right. But it's like the end of the day, like I want this to be like a relationship outside of the simple transaction, you know. And it's like, that only comes from relationships, you know, from the jump, you know. Then I'd rather have that. Yeah, for sure. So,
and I think too, like even with like collaborations with other thought leaders and coaches in the space, when it is like transactional, it's a different energy. And then it like when they do promotion, it's like not viewed as like, I want to help you because I want you to win. It's like not I don't know. It's so much. Then it just shifts the dialogue or the energy of the whole relationship.
So let's take us for an example, brick and mortar spot, you know, knowing that we do need to start spreading awareness largely at the local level because our, you know, KPIs are going to be dollars in the motherfucking bank. So like we need people to come in the door to make purchases because our online offerings or our coaches or our coaching, you know, programs aren't there yet. Right. So it's like getting people in the door. So what we have to offer specifically to the space bar, like I think if you're the right person, like you're going to value that membership or that comp membership or that sauna. So
totally.
Like, and at the same time, I want to feel good about it because, you know, like we're all equal at the end, you know, like at least when you step into our doors, like I don't want one person to be treated a different way for the next. So it's like, I'm already towing the line with that thing that I stand for. And where it's like, oh, because you have a little influence, whether you own a business or not, like I'm going to cut you this deal. So I'm trying to get right in my mind with that type of stuff.
Think about it as like, okay, I'm going to cut them a deal because I know that if I like invite them in for this experience, just to experience it, they're going to tell their 200 people in their network. And then I'm going to be able to spread my impact with FitBar and Spacebar and scale that, like shift that like mindset around it.
No, you're right about that. So like kind of just like early, just thinking about, okay, like establish some of these relationships. First off, let's make sure I vibe with you and that, you know, I don't want to punch you in your chest every time I see your face. And then 2, you know, what we're leading with is like, okay, you know, how about a comp membership here? Like we want you to be able to try every therapy that we have here, the flow, the sauna, the red light, you know, just kind of starting there for like a month 1 again, so I can feel better about the relationship. 1, like I don't want to offer, like what breaks my heart is like putting stuff out there and offering things, people accepting it and then not even using it. That is
because then they don't value it too. That shows that they don't value it.
So you can see I'm a jaded ass cat right now. So anyways, like that's what I don't want to like put myself through. So it's like, you know, let's build this relationship. So, you know, comp membership month 1, month 2, you know, maybe we roll out a discount code so we can start gauging whether or not this is actually converting to your network. And then 3, then maybe work in commissions where, you know, now we're matching any kind of, you know, discounts that are being used by your code. Does that sound like even something that's tangible? Does that make sense? So it's more of an on-ramp, a great opportunity for us to build a relationship over 3 months so that, it's very clear, cut, and concise, and where it's like there's revenue available for you here, beyond just the services. But like, do you think that person would feel like they're jumping through hoops?
Yeah, I think another thing around that, like, I love the whole element of like building that relationship. And the one thing I see is like a lot of influencers or thought leaders or people who do have influence, they're getting hit up in the DMs of people being like, hey, like, here's a discount code. We want to send you this. Like, it's like being different. So for example, like, I think if you were to reach out to them in a more, authentic way, because it totally seems like you said it, like you were very picky about who you would even partner with on an influential standpoint. So it's like shooting that person a voice note on Instagram because they get a billion DMs, but then when you send them a voice note, I do that in my agency. If I want to connect with a thought leader that I know I can help on the PR side or something that we're working on, I will reach out to them, send them a voice note, say their names, talk about what I've noticed in their brand, how I can add value, and then they respond like, I get a billion messages, I never respond, but I want to talk to you. And it's crazy, just like that off the get, like makes such a difference in how they come in. And then another thing I would say even is like you have like a strategy, but even if you offered them to come in and then you had like even anyone listening who wants to attempt like an approach like this, but they don't want to, obviously you don't have the funds to like put money, and honestly it doesn't even equate to that being the best way. If you did like that intro and you let them come try the services and then you ask them like, what would you value? Like, what do you have going on in your business? Because especially with health coaches, one of the things that I see, it's like maybe they would value even just using this space. Maybe they have a podcast, like a lot of my health coaches, they have a podcast and like they would love to just like leverage this space. Maybe that's what the huge value add looks like to them. Mm-hmm. So it's like even just like taking it on not a one size fits all approach, but like setting that relationship. Yeah, it's more work because it's not just like, oh, here's a payment to come in and do this. But I also think that energy and that shift in how they are the rep and the voice for your brand is presenting you in a better light.
No, I like that. No, I like that a lot. Yeah. I mean, as far as like, so one, I want to highlight, that little tip as far as like the voice note.
Or a video or something. Yeah, something just authentic.
Yeah, so like, I mean, as you tend to see, especially in like the internet space or online, is like so many people going way too far in the end of the spectrum where it's just like all bots, just getting blown up. So when you slow it back down and you go back to the other end of the spectrum, like that door opens right up. So you always need to kind of, it's like a game of double dutch, like you got to know when to jump in there. Sometimes it's it's a numbers game where you're just like casting a big net, But every once in a while you just got to pay attention to what's on the bait.
And I always think like I listen to so many, I'm such a person of I love personal development, growth. Like I think that we can always learn. And I think that like you should always be super humble no matter where your business gets. Cause like being an entrepreneur, like you can like lose everything. One day, like one life can be here and one day something can happen and it can turn upside down. And like one of the things that like a couple entrepreneurs that I had Mark Brazil from Iconic on my podcast, and he owns this like $1 billion art brand and they do motivational wall art. And one of the things that he does still to this day, like randomly when he makes time for it in his schedule, he calls people who make orders and he says, thank you. And it's like from the founder. And he always says like, you're not too good just because you're a founder making like 7 figures a year to do those things. And I think like with it goes back to reaching out too. It's like, we're not too good. It's like I have interns on my team who help me with outreach and things like that. But I do majority of it. And I do all the voice notes because like it's my business, like even if the team's growing right now, like it's still like, I'm not too good to ever do that task. That's what I loved. Like when I came here, you were just like, hold up, gotta go take that, handle that. And
did you hear that guy when he first walked in? What did he say? Hey, darling. Hey, darling. Motherfucker, getting a line in order at the register, bruh. What's your background? Come on, man.
He's like, I got ears.
I hear everything, dude. Like right now, when we were up here earlier, I heard the blender break kind of in the background. I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound right.
Nothing gets past this guy.
But no, those are all very beneficial tips. There was something you said that I wanted to come back on.
The message?
No.
A couple founders do that.
You got something? Let's go.
I had a question for you, which is getting into that mindset of how transitioning from, I view Instagram this way, positive to, I want to get into this space of like, providing value. I'm asking people, I'm making engagements, I'm doing all these things that, quote unquote, you're doing. Like, how does one shift their mindset from, not doing those things to doing those things, to getting into a space comfortably for them to do that?
Totally. I think so. Number one, I think like also once you do like the like second part to it is like once you get one like positive response, you're on like you just need the one. Like it's sometimes not about like 10, but if you get one, you'll feel really good about it and you'll continue that effort. But I think it's like, I think Instagram is an amazing tool for that because honestly, I used to love it so much more when I was doing stuff on the influencer side and the algorithm was different. And now I'm like, I don't know, like it's like so different the way it operates as an app. But I do like the fact about like people want to connect with people. And even just like, I've dabbled with like starting an agency Instagram page because everyone's like, it's just natural to have an Instagram for your like agency. But I don't like, people at the end of the day will DM me like if they had a question. I just think that people buy people and they want to connect with people. So leveraging your personal brand to serve, like if FitBar DM'd influencers versus you, the founder, DMing influencers, I just think you'd have a 99% or 90% response rate versus like a 40%. I'm
going to commit to 99.
See, like, I just think people would, and then there's that like humanizing element. Like, oh, I'm talking to Jacob. I'm not talking to like, I don't know who I'm talking to when it's the FitBar account. It could be you, but like also even if you say it's you, like I might be like, yeah, bullshit. It's not the founder, So I think like that leveraging it, like knowing all the value adds, okay, it's a face of the brand. People will feel more comfortable responding and just like knowing once you start, obviously like you'll get that response and you'll feel more confident in it. But I think like to answer your question, you were saying that how would you start? I think shifting that mindset of like how it will serve the business. And then once you hit one, like it's like when you work out, like on people who shift that mindset and they start working out and they're like, oh my God, I wish I did this like 10 years ago. Or I wish I started eating healthy like 5 years ago. I would have felt amazing. I think it's like that kind of thing, but you just have to start. And yeah, I don't know. Any other parts of that question?
That was really good.
I did remember what I wanted to come back to, but first off, let's stay on this topic real quick. So, So with marketing, and something that I personally have had some trouble with when people reach out, not necessarily like say influence marketing, but just more say gym business marketing where, people are offering to run Facebook ads to get you more clients, blah, 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 right? There's never any guarantee with marketing. So that's something that is really weird for me because what other industry can you jump into without an expectation of what you're receiving back? Like there's literally no guarantee to that whatsoever. So like how do you have that conversation? What should businesses be looking at and how to, I guess it's just matching like metrics or the right key performance indicators to recognize what success is and what isn't. But how do you navigate that?
From an influencer standpoint?
Just more, say, working with a business where it's like, so like, say I was working with you and and you're like, oh, I got a few, influencers that are in your space that I think would really help. What I would be paying for ultimately is that campaign, but I'm not paying for the results of the campaign because those are always not guaranteed.
Totally.
So it's just like, I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, totally. I think there's like, that's why I'm like a huge believer in conversion-backed campaign. And I think that with influencers too, like with our whole conversation, I don't think it would be like even the conversation to do a paid influencer campaign. Cause like I think unless companies, which I've worked with brands who have 30K to throw on influencers or 50K, and like that's cool, but they know like that's 30K they can lose or 30K they're willing to risk. So I think that when a brand doesn't want to, and no one wants to, in my opinion, like even if I did have them, I wouldn't want to risk it if it was my company. So I would say like that conversion, like opening up that dialogue and doing something where you give them a link. So they only really make on their sales. So they have that like skin in the game of like, okay, I'm going to make this story, or when I'm here at Spacebar and like documenting my experience, I'm going to share it from the heart and like be really genuine with it, because I want this story to convert and I want to bring in these clients so I can actually make a commission. I think that's a really safe way to do it. But then when it comes to choosing your influencers, that's why I'm like so immersed in this space that I would say like I would not just choose someone in the health and wellness space. I see a lot of people do that when they're choosing influencers. They think like, oh, they were on The Bachelor and they have 1 million followers, so I'm going to invite them in. But it's so much more than that. It's like exactly what you're saying. It's like, okay, who is this demographic of Fit Bar? Not even in the sense of like they're into fitness. No, but are they moms? Are they veterans? Are they into bodybuilding? Are they into CrossFit? Like knowing exactly who your ideal client is at your restaurant, at anyone listening who has a business, knowing your ideal demographic. And even if you have lots, because I know people have lots, picking the main one we want to target, because then we go after that demographic for the influencers. So say your ideal demographic is, just for the sake of this, like bikini competitors who compete in only NPC, who are on prep, or like being super nitty gritty. And then we would go to the influencers who host those followings and like making sure everything's on brand and streamlined. I think the more strategy and niche we can get with even thought leaders and influencers we bring in, the better it'll convert.
Makes sense.
But knowing your audience is key. I meet a lot of brands or like just friends of mine who have companies and they're like, I don't know, I just want like fitness influencers. And it's like, you can't, I feel like that's when you set yourself up for something that wouldn't convert as well as you'd hope.
Yeah. And, whenever that question is posed about like, who is your ideal customer or, your avatar, like I have so many personal things.
You can have multiple too.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, because anytime I go down that creating that, like I feel bad. I feel like I'm cutting other people off. You know what I mean? It's like, just like I got issues.
But they do the same thing. Like I don't do Facebook ads, but Facebook ads, they do the same thing when they create like your audience and they create lookalike audiences, but they do the same thing for Facebook ads.
Yeah.
It's just like on an ad and like they create a lookalike audience and then they see which converts the best and they stick with one. Even though your audience, like everyone loves a smoothie, everyone loves a mushroom coffee, but like who's the one we're going to target for the campaign? And I would say it all comes down to two, like what platforms we're promoting on, like so niche specific. Like when I worked with Nike in Toronto, it was so specific where like even for like market research days, like they only brought in like me and like other girls who looked exactly like me and did exactly, because they were like, this shoe is just for your demographic. Like, yeah, there's going to be girls who don't fit that demographic, and they're going to buy the shoe, but specifically for them, like Nike was only talking to like this one particular metropolitan Toronto girl who goes to this kind of workout class. It was so specific.
Are you recommending like a kind of so say we came to a conclusion of like, this is the customer that we're looking for, then you would kind of pair with a particular influencer, or would it be beneficial also to like highlight an influencer? I'm just trying to think how I would connect these dots. Like almost it seems easier for me to highlight a type of influencer.
You could test, like do different like types.
So like who I'm thinking would go well here from an influencer, as like an influencer avatar that would work well with us would be like a functional nutritionist that lifts, or a personal trainer that fucking burns sage. You know what I mean? So it's like
totally
knowing like, so like again, this holistic approach
to someone, personality to like the psychographics. Yeah.
So like for me, like I could, because ultimately the people that like we were talking space bar now, like the people that I think that are gonna resonate most with me are people that get how just like raw I am and how honest I am and how bro-y I can be at certain times, but like this motherfucker doing breath work, you know what I mean? So it's like, I bridge that gap, and that's who I want ultimately as people around me. Again, like the functional nutritionist who gets after it in the weights and isn't just thinking that their shit don't stink. Like they get down, you know what I mean? So they have this knowledge, but then they're like a real person. I feel like the people that are getting down and following those people are ultimately who are going to really resonate like with our messaging too.
Totally. And another thing I want to say on that, like if anyone's watching the video, it's like, I always say the riches are in the niches. So like if you penetrate that one particular niche and you're the go-to like brand, especially in the beginning of a brand marketing journey. So a lot of people who are trying to build like influencer wise or like just personal brand wise, if you meet someone, I meet a lot of people who are like, I want to be the next fitness influencer, like the next Paige Hathaway, who has like 5 million Instagram followers. And she's been in the fitness industry for like 20, 30 years. Like ever since she was young, she started her fitness page and she grew. So someone like that who grew like an early adopter to Instagram, they never had to go through this like strategy work. They literally just posted like their meals, their selfies, and they grew because it was such a different stage. And now she's like the fitness icon, and she can be super vanilla and post a leg day one day and then post her smoothie the next day, and she can convert, and she has that brand that when you're in this stage of dabbling in and building an online brand, you have to be so niche specific. But then when you are niche specific and you dominate this, like say we go after this one demographic, then you penetrate that and you're the go-to for that kind of like ideal avatar. It spreads naturally because that's just what happens with like a good brand. It scales, and then you can actually become more generic and broad in your marketing messaging and be like, okay, not just like the personal trainer that like lights sage, but you can be like the personal trainer that also like doesn't care about sage. And then like you can like branch out and it naturally works. I always say like a YouTube vlogger is an example. It's such a novelty to post a YouTube vlog and have people like get views for eating an apple. Like a YouTube vlogger, any successful YouTube vlogger, if you look at their brand history, they've been on the platform from when it was newer, like vlogging was new, like the Dolan twins. They're like these YouTube vloggers they started when they were like 12 and now they're 20, 22, and they're just killing it. But they were the first ones who started vlogging. So guys see that and they're like, oh, I'm going to post silly vlogs like the Dolan twins, and they don't blow up. They get 2 views. But it's like also because when they started. So that's why I think like being niche specific in the beginning of your online brand journey for any business is so important. And naturally, as you grow and you build that cult following, I'm all about that. Like you got to build that cult following because then they're going to be advocates of your brand and it's going to help you scale to get to that legacy point where like you have that app and it's getting millions of downloads a month.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. It makes sense. Fuck, let's do it. So all right, now let's circle back to, you did touch on personal growth and personal development. What were some of the areas that you felt like that needed the most growing? So like here with the Barcode Collective, like we think about mind, body, business, and relationships, and kind of those being some major buckets and like foundational pillars that create a life of having it all. You know, like what good is a super fit body if you're a dick? You know what I mean? You're not treating your other person right, or you got all the money in the world and, you know, you're super out of shape and, you know, you're going to be gone in 2 years, right? So it's like with your personal development, what were some of the areas that you felt might have been lacking a little bit or ultimately that you wanted to develop and grow?
Totally. I love this question. I feel like it's evolved in my own entrepreneurial journey ever since I was like, I would say 18, 19, have always been into health and wellness and fitness my whole life, but I think that I went the wrong way into it. Like I'm not saying, so I started competing at 19 and I loved the gym. And then when I went to college, I met kids in their 4th year and they were like, you need to compete. You're always in the gym. Like you love to work out. You're really lean naturally. Like you would do really well if you just like bulked up and competed. And I think that like I always had that like really extreme personality, which served in such a way like with the business, because I apply that same like mannerism of being all in. Like I like to do everything myself and I'm very like particular about everything. And that's kind of transferred over in like the health and wellness space, because then I went super all in on like the fitness competing world. And then I competed and that was like my whole life and everything had to be weighed that I ate. And I'm not saying that's wrong. Definitely like served in such an amazing way for the time it was. But for me, I feel like I've been always playing this dance, even in my entrepreneurial journey, of like also learning to have balance. So on the fitness side of like when I stopped competing, I was like, okay, Ayesha, like you need to do health and wellness for life. Like it doesn't have to be this like gym twice a day, because that's not sustainable to even like build a business right now. Like I couldn't be that all in, but then having this balance of like, okay, doing the workout and then showing up in this area and like having all cups of my life. And I'm figuring it out every day, like trying to dance between like having all cups fulfilled, because it's really easy to just like just only focus on like, okay, the health and wellness and my routine and my like fitness regime and then my business. And then what suffers is like relationships and social time with friends and all these things. And I've been like so guilty of that. Like my whole early 20s, like I feel like now I'm 25, but my parents always tell me, because I'm really tight with my family, they're always like, you know, you need to chill out from time to time. Like you can sit back, you can go out on a Friday night, you can, like we were talking at Chase's birthday, like about how we both don't drink, but I don't think I've ever had that phase in my life, even in school, where I had that like wild, like get drunk with my friends on the weekend. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm saying I'm like the opposite. Whenever I get asked this question on a podcast, I'm like, I'm always trying to dance between not being too extreme and like letting myself chill and also enjoy life. Because what's life if you don't have those moments to just chill out with your friends and your family? Because we're working our asses off for what?
Yeah, no, definitely. So unpacking that a little bit is probably more the relationships, like being able to back off and
chill more.
Okay, gotcha. Relax. Yeah, like what, you know, you being 25, you know, like listening to you and you know, watching you from afar, like you can see that you're about your shit. You know, that you have a lot of clarity on what you're working towards. Sure, there's some 25-year-olds out there, but most of them aren't. You know, so. What are some of like your friends of your age kind of, are you able to have conversations with them about the grind that you're going through? And
yeah, totally. So I felt, honestly, when I was back in Toronto in Canada, I felt like when I had different goals, I invested in my first mentor at 19 and he made me do a 10-year vision plan. So I, from a younger age, I remember like crafting that 10-year vision and then reverse engineering it with him on like, okay, what would I do to achieve year 10 today, right? And I've always like had that mindset, and I think that in Canada, I really felt alone. Like I didn't have anyone like I could talk to or who would vibe off of these conversations. So honestly, like I remember college was really tough for me because I felt like I had a couple, I don't know, I just wouldn't talk about this stuff with a lot of people around me because they just didn't care. And I was kind of weird for being like that. So I started listening to podcasts at a young age. And then I'm grateful for those outlets. And then I think that's when I leveraged online because I made friends through just online communities. And then I joined a mastermind, and then that was online. So I had friends online who were also my age, but they were in the States or in other like places across the world. But then when I moved to LA, I found like I felt more of my people. But I will say a lot of, in LA, we're so lucky. Like there's so many different types of walks of life. And I do have friends who are my age and very entrepreneurial, but I find like most of my friends are older than me, but age is just a number. I think it's more about like the type of person you are, the mindset, your approach to life on if you're gonna actually like form a relationship. But I think in LA, I've been so grateful and blessed that I've connected with a lot of people who are very like same mindset, really focused, and like we have so much respect for each other, and it's like nothing but like powerful conversations and just wanting to be the best in all areas. But if you're like listening to this or watching this and you feel like you don't have that outlet, then like social media has been such a key for that, and like online communities and platforms, because it definitely like feels really alone. And then there's power when you can have conversations with people who get it and like see you and understand like the pain points too.
Absolutely. So it sounds like, you know, you've done kind of a lot of self-work, but you also mentioned like mentorship. So what were some of the major, so some people, you know, people have to make that switch, and in order to commit and invest dollars into these mentors, what were some of the biggest takeaways or, you know, returns that you got from your mentorship programs? And if you wanted to, you know, drop any of those that you've invested in that, you know, you'd recommend to others.
Yeah, totally. And I will say this too, like, I think like, I don't know if it's since I've been out here, like I haven't even paid for mentorship, like a program, but I've received so much mentorship through like my podcast and through just like we said, like adding value. It's like when we meet someone, we want to add value to them, but then they add value to us. And I think there's so much in those relationships. So I'm not saying like all mentorship is paid. There's so much free resources. Like, I still go to a lot of like entrepreneurial events in LA that I feel like there's like, run club community I started going to, and I've met like my mentor who mentors like all of us in his community. He, D. Murthy, he was on my podcast. He's super awesome. He owns like 5 clothing brands, and he hosts like his form of mentorship. Like he has this podcast where he literally like drops so much different, his 2 cents on so many topics. But then he, within his brand, like he just says like, as long as you guys support me, like he's like, you guys know that you guys coming to my run club or shouting out the brand, that's like his form of like us giving back. And I honestly think those relationships are so well received. But I have invested in mentors like before, and I think that they served in such a way. The first mentor I had was Joel Brown, and he was like a mindset coach, and he's all about the 10-year vision. So he was my first like mastermind program that I invested in. And I will say there's like such a power in like putting money down, because I don't know, sometimes like if someone told me to like get out a book and write out my 10-year vision, I don't think I would do it. But then when all of a sudden you pay someone, you do it, and then you have a Zoom call with them to review it, you get shit done. So I see so much value in like paying for a mentor, and that was such a great experience. But I also think like self-awareness is key. So it really depends on what season you're in your business, in your life. Because when I was 19, like that whole mastermind, like the ROI for me, like, yes, it wasn't monetarily because I didn't have a business and I was figuring out everything. The ROI came back on the mindset. Like I just gained so much clarity that I couldn't equate that to an ROI, or like not necessarily like that vision has totally changed, and I haven't acted on that vision, but I have a new vision and I learned practices and things like that. So I would say being super self-aware with what you need, because right now I feel like I don't have like one particular mentor, but I like take pieces from so many people who I look up to through podcasts and through events and through their brands and their communities and what they have. So thinking about what will serve, and sometimes that is a paid mentorship program. Like it might be a business coach, right, who has what he might, like one of my friends, his mentor is Ezra, and he does like Facebook ads and funnels, and he paid for mentorship with him, and that served and scaled his business like 10x because he taught him everything he knew. So I think it really depends on like where you're at in your life, but there's so much free resources, and I think just always being a student. But it depends too, right? Like if for me, I'm very self-motivated. So if I like need something and it's free, I will do the practice. Like if they had like a thing where you had to go show up and do the thing, I would do it. But if sometimes you need that, like if I put down the money, you'll do it. Depends on your personality type as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's getting clear on like what is your limiting factor. Like for me, why I typically don't invest in those things, because I know that I'm not going to be able to see it through. So ultimately, it's not the money thing. I know that I'm not going to just create new time. I'm not just, I'm not going to just have, say a new manager or, everywhere. So like, I don't have to, you know what I mean? So it's just like, I'm not ready to capitalize on that, even though. So that's why sometimes I don't invest in some of those. I have in the past, and that ultimately what happened, it was like $5,000 down the drain, just like
That's
that.
like how it happened to me like recently, and I was like, what the hell am I doing? Like I feel like putting skin in the game, and like in your own sense of like scaling up a new offer in the business and actually like learning through the trenches of taking action and failing and fixing it, like that's been like such a teacher for me versus like doing a program right now, for at least for me. And like I always say this to friends, like I don't know, moving from Canada to LA, it was such a difference in lifestyle, and then financially with like the Canadian dollar, I remember like that big move financially was a jump. And then when I got here, I was like, I'm leveraging living in LA to the fullest ability. I went to every single like meetup and event, and I used social media to network with people, and I used my age as a weapon to like, and then I started the podcast, and I had all these conversations, and I like leveraged the fact that I was paying like 5x rent that I did in Toronto. And I think that like that was like, I always say this to friends, like our rent we pay in LA is almost just like a fee we pay to like be in this area. Well, I know right now like the circumstances are different, but there was always entrepreneurial events that were really good when you're tapped into the right communities and you knew like, okay, what events to go to. There's so many resources like that. Like Shopify was doing such killer events before COVID hit, and like in person, now they're online. And then there was like my run club I was going to, there was all these things where I would literally be meeting with founders who have they are mentors to me in their own way. And I would meet them because like we live in the same like mile radius, you know?
Yeah. D. Murthy, you said, huh?
Yeah, he's great. And I like him because he's like very similar personality type, like really fast. Like he just has a billion things going on and I can really vibe with him. So I would say like too, like if you're looking for a mentor, like you really need to vibe with them on so many levels. Like for me, no offense to like any mindset kind of mentor, there's a lot of, because that's so important, right? Your mindset and how you approach life. But for me personally, like I don't think I can invest in a spiritual coach right now just because of like, I know I'm like, I want someone more tactical because I'm like
trying to get that money.
I'm just like always like, what are my action items for the day? Like it depends on how you operate. And I would say like, if you are investing like into your, if you want to invest in a mentor, there's so much value there, but do your research and study. Cause I've invested into things where I really didn't need to spend that 10 grand that you know?
Yeah. Want to know something funny?
Yeah.
Maybe not funny, but whatever. Story. So D. Murthy. I started listening to group chat a little bit.
Stop. They're my boys. They just shouted me a happy birthday.
So then of course, Grand Running Club kind of pops up on my radar.
That's what I go to, yeah.
So then I started seeing, virtual run in December. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, hey, you know what? This might be a unique opportunity for me to reach out. So I hit up Grand Running Club and I'm like, hey guys, like I'm slowly reopening our wellness club over here in Pasadena. So I know that virtually this might not be too relevant to everybody that's participating, but I would love to offer our services as we reopen to, help get anybody local that's going to be doing this virtual run recovered, whether it's through our ice baths or our saunas or our compression. So I did that personal outreach.
Yeah.
They did hit me back. So someone was like, oh, here, it sounds good. Here's a number. Text me and we'll jump on a call.
Yeah.
Haven't jumped on a call yet, but anyways, that's that like, I think things that work, and that's how I roll ultimately, was like, I want to give and I want to be a part of things, people that are just doing dope shit. You know what I mean? Because I do know, and I'm, full disclosure, like I know the impact that's ultimately going to have on my business. And I'll tell you right to your face is like, hey, yeah, I want this to feel good, but ultimately I just want eyes on us as well. I want to be a part of something, but I also want to provide value. And ultimately, like, what I'd be getting out of that partnership. But at the front end, it's like, let's build this relationship. I would love to somehow be a part of this virtual run.
It's an in-person run. I got the plug.
Oh, okay.
You should come. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I was a part of it from like before COVID. We still run on the weekends. It's just more low-key.
But they're doing like
they're doing a virtual one for the marketing and like online brand.
All right, you just blew him up, man. D's the one spreading freaking COVID right now? They're the hot spot?
No, he's so good about it. Like, he's super like safe about everything because he just had a baby. Well, his wife had a baby. So it's a good community though.
If he had a baby, I would really be blown away. That sounds amazing.
Superhuman.
And then kind of just back on the personal development a little bit. Have you seen, I've been big on I've been going hard. Like I usually don't watch TV, but I've been going hard since COVID, just like watching all sorts of shit.
What are you watching?
So most recently, I think we got one episode left, but it's a documentary called The Vow.
The Vow?
Mm-hmm. Your whole world is going to be.
You're smart. It's like watching TV. I was waiting for something like
no, it's all documentaries.
Tiger King.
So for recently, like we've been taught, like there's been some major documentaries that we just chatted, like Social Dilemma is one of them.
I have to watch that. I'm scared.
Another one I've been telling people about is Planet of the Humans, but personal development, like this shit hit me kind of weird. So it's called The Vow, and it's all about it's about a cult. It's about ultimately kind of turns into this sex cult. Right. But the whole thing and I think why it hit so hard is because it was documented so well from the inside of the cult that when it wraps it all up, you're getting the actual lectures basically from the leader, the thought leader that's leading this thing. And so much of it hits so damn hard with everything that we have been told, in this personal development world. So whether it started off completely from a good place, it developed into whatever, but I was just God damn, who has gone through this program? Because it's a massive program. I had never heard of it, but the things that they're teaching from a mindset thing and getting uncomfortable and it's just like having self accountability and that drive to push yourself. Like it's all things that have been told to us in this personal development space. And it's like, damn, like how many people came from this? And just like you get this inside look to how this cult was created. And it's very similar to what we all talk about, like the words that we spoke now. And like if we were to rally a troop or coach people ultimately to change their life and have transformation, it's essentially this program. So these guys were like doing some majorly like dope shit for people, like really uncovering limiting beliefs. And, there's a lot of good that came out of it, but it just was trippy. It was like,
Really?
I recommend it. Definitely recommend it. So
What did you realize after it? Like, what was your biggest takeaway?
that we're kind of brainwashed, even on the personal development front, and where it's like I go hard and I'm hard on myself, and it's like more and more and more like
That's like, yeah.
and I end up, saying that to people too, where that doesn't sit well with them, So like, again, like this isn't the first time I talked about how I show up differently in different relationships with people that are really close to me. They see that like push, like me pushing you, like, like that side of it. And it's like, that's what we know. And that's how we speak to ourselves. And that people who are really trying to transform their lives or do something, that's what they do to themselves. Like there's kind of an unhealthy relationship with it, like whether it's punishment or, like you don't do something. So you either speak to yourself negatively or you're like, all right, fuck that. I'm going to wake up early and I'm going to go to the gym. Like there's this level of discipline in it, which is needed. But I don't know. It's just like, I just had really weird feelings watching it. And so I think I would love for you to watch it and like, let me know. So it's like, I think like an 8 or 9 show series, but just because, okay. This is why I think I felt weird, because I knew it was this sex cult thing, but the entire time and the way it unfolded, I'm like, sign me up. You know what I mean? Like this motherfucker dropping bombs, like just I'm like, sign me up. And then it goes into like, then it starts showing a little bit of the darker side, and it starts showing like how, he's now preaching this misogynistic message. And this is, I guess, what I'm seeing a lot of, fuck it, I'll say names like Elliot Hulse, for example. Came from like the fitness world, big influence. And now he's like running this more like men's group, very divided men's group, misogynistic, talking about how, femininity is killing man, our country and men as a whole, so it's like very targeted conversation. And then like from where I'm sitting, I'm like, okay, how do people go from where they were to that messaging? But it unpacks the cult's back end of all like the programming that's going involved. And then you start seeing how the women in this group, are now it looks like they're being empowered, but they're like being manipulated to be weak. And just the way that it pans out, like it's just a really weird viewpoint on it. And it just had me second guessing like all of the personal development that I've done.
Who, personal development wise, like who would be your biggest mentor that's like changed your life?
Honestly, I don't really have a one person. Who like resonates
that like really just like, they're
like,
awesome.
I like Aubrey Marcus's conversations. And then I read a lot of books. So like to the point where I don't even know the authors.
Totally.
But it's the messaging that resonates. And that's, I think, part of like what was weird to me. It was just like, damn, it's just that messaging. It's I don't know, like it's hard to explain. I obviously struggle to explain that, but like if you watch The Vow, like I'm just curious if you're like, oh shit, that's been said to me. I think even more in particular, like I've been a part of like a men's group type of thing early on. We're just going through it was like a large group of men, and then just kind of seeing that similar conversation of really grooming and manipulation. And even though it probably is with this underlying belief of having like that I would benefit from it, but it was just, I don't know, it's just really weird for me to watch it.
Well,
Does that make sense at all? Like it's just a different angle on what's happening. Yeah. And it was just like, wow, I've been there. And that's ultimately the 5 G's that I dropped was in that.
Wow.
And it was like me knowing marketing and knowing closes. And like this entire like weekend at this particular thing, But a lot of guys are getting benefits of it. I'm not the guy though. You know what I mean? And I know I'm not the guy. And I was sitting there waiting for this entire weekend. All right, when's the pitch? When's the offer? When's the offer? And it was such a powerful weekend that I knew it was coming. I knew the offer was coming, and there was so much playing into the offer that I went for the offer. And then like 2 days later, I was like, I'm not going to use this shit. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do any of that.
Wow.
But it was just like that, how much manipulation was involved, for better or for worse. You know, I'm sure this guru guy, whatever, he wasn't a guru, but the leader had these best intentions. I feel like he did, but like manipulation at any level, changing somebody and transforming somebody kind of by brute force or by outwitting somebody, like it just ended bad. And I think it always ends bad. I don't know, just tangent, but go check out The Vow. I'm going to get everybody on fucking Netflix just watching all these different documentaries. But yeah, not to say that there's a dark side to personal development, but I think my takeaway from that was that I know what I need to do. I know the person that I need to become, and I have all the tools that I need to do it. So stop looking outward and think that somebody else is going to transform you. You're a fucking human, and you know what needs to get done. Just do it.
On that note, like, have you done psychedelics?
Yes. All right, wrap it up. Let's clear this fucking memory card. Let's go another 2 hours.
What psychedelics have you done? And I listen to a lot of Aubrey, and he always talks about how psychedelic drugs, they open up you to like within, the demons within, the things that you maybe put down under the surface, and it brings it all to life. And then past like those experiences, you can have major breakthroughs. So like you made me think about that when you said like everything's within us. But that's why I've like really grown an interest into psychedelics. I haven't done any yet, but I'm like really interested because I think that I know like we're entrepreneurs. We know we're capable. We've gotten here. And it's sometimes about like removing things that are like resistance. We were talking about it before. You're like, maybe I'm self-sabotaging myself here. But it's like psychedelic experience, I feel like can go in and bring that all to surface.
Yeah. So, I mean, psilocybin has been it for me. And yeah.
Is that what it did? Like, what was the experience?
It's within the dosage, you know? So it's like, you can have it and you can, open you up and have a different experience, or, you can have 6 grams and see what happens, and like, something's going to come of that. And I did a kind of a whole solo episode of trying to unpack a lot of it a few weeks ago, but yeah, it was very intense. And that was it, so it is coming from within you, and like,
did you do the psychedelics for that outcome? Was that the intention behind it?
Yeah, but it's not, you can't control that outcome.
Totally. But I think with the intention, it's key, right?
Yeah. So I did that 6 grams because I needed something to come of it. I needed, I was ready and I was doing everything that I could to keep everything together, and
what came out of it?
There's a bit of a death, so like, I mean, there was some specifics that came out of it, things that I was battling with through COVID. And, a lot of it was just like, at what point, where does my responsibility stop for any of this stuff? And, feeling all the pressure on myself and feeling completely alone. And, there are some things with my girlfriend as far as like how, I show up in that relationship and how hard I push. And, so a lot of that stuff and, trying to help, and a lot of the kind of what I was talking about, like this manipulation of being able to influence people is, wrestling with whether that's ever good, ever for that other individual, like, cause I can do that pretty well, like I can help somebody thinking I can help mold somebody pretty damn well. And that was something that I was wrestling with, because we know that it's that individual's journey, and who the fuck am I to shape that person in any way, even if it's for the better? Like who's to say it's for the better?
But
like,
if they make a choice like, hey, I want you to help me with X so I can achieve X, then and like, even if they take a step further, like a coach, then they invest you, they're giving you, it's almost like you owe it to them then, because they're paying you to help them get to that outcome.
Yeah. But then you have to kind of accept that responsibility as what happens when that happens, So it's like, say somebody wants to, I don't know. It was just.
I think like it comes down to too, like both parties, like being, like whenever I like have a client that like we do a call and they want to like work with me, at the same time, like I know I don't say this, but like when I'm on a discovery call or something like that, I am interviewing them like the same as they're like seeing me. Like in my head, it's my choice too if I think this relationship will benefit both of us, because I would never, and I think it comes down to being like in integrity in business, because I see like the coach that I invested in who didn't deliver like any kind of ROI, I almost felt this thing like, why would he take my money? Like if he knew he couldn't help me or like help me, or it wasn't for my highest good. But it's like hoping that everyone has that same like line of integrity. Cause like if I know, like even if they're someone who's a perfect client, but for some reason I don't think I can particularly help them achieve X outcome that they came to me, I say I can't, like I'll give them someone who can help them. And I think that everyone has to do their part in doing that too. And just be so in integrity with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that would help that process, but it's like sometimes like what I see is like, I hear people telling me what they want, either directly or indirectly, just in conversation, and then not seeing them do the action steps in order to get there. So then I kind of help create that, kind of unsolicited at times, but I feel like, they're asking for it, but do they really want it? So then I kind of shape that for them. And then I ultimately give them what they want. And then they, don't do anything with it, or I don't know. It's just, I don't even really know how to even talk about that.
People have to want to make the decision first and want to change. There's always like that quote. It's like, you can't change in relationships. Like you change them. People think they can, but you just can't change people sometimes. But I do think like, there's a difference of being like, it's just like you doing you so well, you're going to be a positive influence to everyone you're around. That's like, because when you love someone, like even if it's like your family, sometimes you're like, oh, if only you did this like blueprint, you could be here. It's like, yeah. And I feel like family is such a great way, like relationships, people you love, you want so much for them, and you just see how you can connect the dots for them and help them like skyrocket something in their life. But if they don't want to do it, then they're never going to do it. It's almost like they have to come to you and be like, give me the tools.
Yeah. I don't know. I got to think about that a lot more, how I feel about all that. But let's wrap this up and let's give somebody out there who might be looking for some influencer marketing one last little tactic on where to get started, whether it's starting something local or reaching out to somebody else. Like what's the one thing that someone that doesn't have any kind of influencers, first off, you think everybody would benefit from having some level of influence marketing?
I think that, of course, like it depends on the business and the goals, but I do think there's so much value to it, because I say influencer marketing is a word of mouth on steroids. And word of mouth is like everything. That's how I will describe it. Because word of mouth is the old book of the, like, it's the old rule in the book that, like, that's the way a lot of people grew their business. Like, my mom has her own business, but grew through word of mouth, not Instagram, So I would say influencer marketing is word of mouth on steroids. And if your business can benefit from that, then I think you owe it to yourself to dabble in it a little bit.
Okay. Is there something that you would say, so, with traditional marketing, like flyers or Facebook ads or whatever, is there anything that you're seeing maybe past clients move away from and dump in order to make room for this style of marketing or type of marketing?
I would say, so I think that your social platforms and like having an active presence on there is such a good starter point, because I also will, like, a lot of my friends are founders of companies and they want to dabble into influencer marketing, but it's like, to form those relationships too and show that, like, that credibility, they need to have, like, not a ghost page. So, like, to get that good response. Like, that's why I'm like, I love leaning with that personal brand, that entrepreneur, that founder reaching out, because that will be so well received. And if it is your company, but you don't have a company page, then like building up your own brand platform to be that community. Like when someone comes to Fit Bar, like the page, you have so many things going on there. Like you guys have the podcast linked, you have your face of the brand. Like you don't just have like product photos, you have like people behind it. So having like your brand strategy like active and really warm will serve for when you do reach out to influencers, because that's like one of the components I do think that would serve when you want to reach out to people, to want them to actually come in and talk to you and hear more about your brand. And then I would say like relationship building. I know that's like not a good, like a fun tip, but building those relationships with people who are your people for your brand. Like when you think about your brand, like then if that is like going to a run club or like listening to the podcast and like sending meaningful messages, because even if nothing, like if you don't even form a relationship with that influencer for them to come in and do a post or whatever it is, you can form a relationship with someone that will grow, and then eventually that relationship will flourish into something if the intent is in a good spot.
Yeah. And then one last personal question would be, so the future version of Ayesha, whether it's the 29 version that you put a 10-year plan out when you're 19, what is one personality trait or characteristic of that Ayesha that this current version doesn't quite have yet and that you're working towards?
That's such a loaded question. It's hard. Oh my gosh. I feel like just one trait or like one element, could I say?
So that future version, what does she do that you know that she's going to be doing, but that you just haven't been able to establish yet?
Ooh, on the business side, I have like, I can't even say it in one word, but like basically like being more, I want to be more in flow with the business side and being able to like delegate and live like, I know we talk about like scalable, like you talked about the app and like having the app like built out and having it a scalable business model. And I want to be at that level when I'm 29 where like the business runs itself. Like, yes, I know I'm going to be very hands-on to the business for sure, but I want to have like an element of my business scaled where it's like, I know I got an A team behind me and I'm working my ass off to build that team and find the right people. But I definitely at that time in my life, I want to have it like where I could actually go on I know I can't go on a trip right now, but I could go on a trip and don't feel like the business will not run or be generating money if I like took a step back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I love that. I love the fact that you're already taking steps towards that.
I'm thinking about that all the time. I think about that every single day. It keeps me up at night.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm very impressed by you and everything that you do, the way you carry yourself and the way you speak and how direct you are and how much clarity you have. So hats off to you.
Thank you. I'm figuring it out every day. I don't feel like I have it all figured out, but definitely like, I think that attitude serves too, because you're always trying to be better. And yeah, whenever you're, that quote, it's like, if you're in the smartest person in the room, get out of the room. I feel like I'm never the smartest person in any room. And if I am, like, I move away. Like I moved to LA from Canada.
Well, this is a small room that we're in here. So we got a 33. One of us has got to be the smartest. And the point is, you're never the smartest. No, you're never the smartest in all areas.
That's
right?
Totally true.
So it's like, yeah.
You can always learn from everyone.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, man. Tell everyone where they can follow you and they can reach out if they need some marketing help. PR.
And if you guys just have questions, like feel free to just shoot me any of your questions, like voice note me.
Yeah,
do that little voice note that features on Instagram. But Instagram is such a great way to connect. It's just at Ayesha Sehra, and like the spelling, I hate when people spell out their things on the podcast, so I'm sure that'll just be in the title or something like that.
In the show notes.
I have, my agency's called Grow the Social. So we have a website, growthesocial.com. And then I have a podcast called Coffee and a Good Vibe, which, Jacob, you totally need to come on.
I don't drink coffee and I'm full of bad vibes. So
you're literally you could be the face of the podcast because that's so you. But it was such a pleasure being on, and thank you again. I love this. I love talking, and I hope you guys got value out of it.
Yeah, well, thanks. Thank you for sharing everything. And if you guys have any other questions, like she said, hit her up. Hit me up if you guys have any questions. Cub_Saldana, or better yet, come stop by the Fit Bar. Get yourself a little coffee. Bring the good vibes. We can always use some more of those. And
Lift your vibe.
Lift your vibes. That's right. LYV all day long. But until next time, guys, we are out of here. Boop.